Hi, Leah. Welcome to Miracles Happen.
Hi, Maria. Excited to be here.
Me too. I'm really excited for this conversation. We are hours and hours apart, 9 hours apart.
Yes.
This is the beauty of technology, especially we were just talking about 2020. Grr. But yay,
Our
yay to be able
crazy
to
year.
connect. Yay to be able to connect with you in this way. So I'm really excited for this topic. I can't wait for listeners and viewers on YouTube to watch and hear what we're going to be talking about today. This is fascinating. So a little bit of background for folks. I watched or read something that Leah wrote on a fertility person like board on Facebook. It's like a fertility practitioner group. And I went,
yes.
Whoa, you do what? I must talk to you. So this is cool. If you can though, tell people who you are and a little bit about your background and what you do in the fertility world and how you came to do it.
Sure. So I'm Leah Irby, and I was just mentioning that I'm actually from the West Coast in the US, from the Seattle area is where I grew up. And then I met a guy and moved to Sweden with my Swede. And, but in my fertility story, I was married before, and I went through 4 years of trying to conceive and going to the fertility clinic and IUIs and all kinds of stuff. And then had this sort of the journey of the dark night of the soul experience where I only thing I could really call it is a spiritual awakening, really, because I had a bunch of dental work, and it took like going to all these different people, going to a coach who did kind of a hypnotherapy type thing with me. And then I started having dreams, and I had this dream, like, get them out. And I had teeth implants, and I thought, okay, I need to take out my teeth implants. And I get to the holistic dentist, and they're like, oh, not just that, but your root canal teeth are a problem. And anyway, but they, on that first visit, were like, this totally could be causing your infertility. And it was that final, like, I'd worked with the fertility clinic. They're like, we don't know what's going on. It's because you're over 35.
Yeah,
like, oh, that's it. That's not really any reason.
Nope.
Oh, no, it's also because you've been trying for 3 years. That's why you're having trouble. I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that was actually something the fertility clinic doctor wrote down.
Oh gosh.
Reasons why you're having trouble.
That was an actual diagnostic note, huh? Wow.
Yeah. I'm just, like, when I think about it, I'm like, this is not, yeah. So it's like, anyway, but I felt intuitively the whole time, I felt something was up. And so I kept asking. I'm just someone who's like, I'm going to go for the answer. I'm going to look. And so I was trying all these different therapies and acupuncture and massage therapy, body work. I mean, I was trying every practitioner you can think of, and nobody was looking at my mouth. They're just, yeah, whatever. And, there was, the naturopath would say, like, oh, your adrenals are low, or, oh, you got borderline low thyroid, or, there was all this like markers of chronic inflammation, but nobody was looking at what's causing it. So anyway, finally it was like this coaching session, and I had this dream, and I'm like, okay, I got to find the dentist. I don't know why. I'm going to go.
Wow.
So anyway, I got this stuff taken out, and then I was also reading this book. Have you heard of the Ringing Cedars of Russia series?
No.
The first one's called Anastasia. It's a Russian book series, and this coach mentioned this to me and it was it's kind of this story of this woman who is really a healer, a really not been in touch with modern society at all. And this guy runs into her, and then it's kind of their story of having a child, and this child created in love. And this story just really struck me as like, oh, this is the key ingredient for conception. And so during my getting this stuff taken out, I went through a divorce, and but I kept thinking, like, I'm supposed to have this child. Like, it was very I mean, you talked about spirit babies, and I didn't have a term for it, but I just knew there was a soul hanging out with me.
Yeah.
And I just kept feeling like I'm supposed to be this, for lack of a better term, mother of a holy child. Like I would listen to songs about Mary, mother of Jesus. And, you know, in the Christian tradition, maybe some people would be like, oh, that's sacrilegious or something. You can't, you know, do that. But I had this just feeling of like this calling, you know, this spiritual child is supposed to come to me, but I don't know when and how long it's going to take. And so, but in that process of having this discovery, I started having this call to this work. I just felt like I need to work with other people. No one's talking about our intuition. No one's talking about the spirit, the souls of these children. People are just getting at the, you know, the surface stuff. And I just really felt like this is something I need to do. But then I kept moving countries. I moved to India for a year and taught an international school. Then I moved back to the US. And then I met Matthias on travels. And then like it was 4 years later and we started Skyping and we got together. But 5 months after I moved to Sweden, I got pregnant, natural conception. So at 43, I had my child. And just now, my child is now 4, and I've been feeling this other child, like this other spirit baby with me. And actually, the first podcast I did was with Kelly Meehan, with the Spirit Baby podcast. And she told me after the podcast, you know, you've got like a spirit baby hanging out with you, don't you? And I'm like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, she was bugging me during the whole interview. And I told her, like, this isn't the time right now.
I listened to that interview. For people who are interested, go listen to it. It's really good. Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, afterwards, she was like, just so you know, this little one's hanging around. And just recently, she started talking to me. Like, I've just felt the presence, but she started talking to me as well and telling me stuff about my child who's already here.
Oh, wow.
And I just started like piecing all these things, like threads of different things that I felt with my pregnancy. And then my child just told me, like in the last 3 weeks, said, Mom, I was in your tummy before and I died. And then I was in your tummy again and I was born.
Oh,
and
yep.
I just had, like, I still have goosebumps when I think of it, but suddenly I had one pregnancy with my ex-husband and it was ectopic and it was 6 weeks.
Wow.
And as soon as Emmanuel said that, I said, oh my gosh,
Whoa.
yeah, you were with me then. But I had always thought that Emmanuel showed up after my divorce. I thought I had to be in the perfect conditions, the perfect situation, we all think like we have to be in this perfect place before this child will show up.
Right.
And those comments just made me realize, like, no, actually, sometimes the child is choosing you a long time before you might not be ready. Maybe neither of you is ready yet, but
right.
it's there. But yeah, that was really powerful to me because I said, oh my gosh, because I felt, like I said, I felt this energy, but I thought maybe it was different energy.
Sure.
So 2 years after my child was born, I was working as a teacher here, and I had horrible health challenges again and just quit my job just straight up. Like, I don't have an income, but I started doing a fertility coach certification. I just said, I got to just go into this because it's like the direction I've got to go. And so I started my business here, and I really found just a month or two into it. Well, I'm a music teacher is my background and my training. I taught orchestra for 20 years. I worked with kids I knew and adults. And music was always a soothing thing. And so it only maybe a month or two in, I realized I've got to help people write songs. It just suddenly, I saw an article about this lullaby project that people were doing with babies. So it was like when low-income moms were pregnant, and they were helping them write a song to help them connect in the pregnancy.
Wow.
And I said, well, why don't we do this before they get pregnant, like to help connect with the spirit babies?
Yeah.
And so like my very first client, like I had a set of like 9 sessions, and the very second to last session I said, we have to write a song. This is what we're gonna do.
That's so cool.
So yeah, so that was kind of the start of my song writing with the fertility coaching, with the spirit baby conversations. And she was amazing because we were actually both in Stockholm. We're both expats. So she's from the UK. So we're both English speakers, but we did all of our sessions online because we're like on opposite ends of the city. Mm-hmm. But just 6 months ago, I got to meet her in person and see her baby.
My God, that is amazing.
I played my viola. I got out the viola and I said, I've got to play this song that we wrote together. And it was so cool he's like this super calm and just really old soul, like I could just see that with this child. And so he's like happy to see everybody. There was, 10 people at the party or something. And then when I got at the viola and I started playing that song, and she had a recording of it and she listened to it, like when she did IVF and when she did the transfer and stuff and everything, she was listening to the song and through the pregnancy. And anyway, and I'm singing on the recording. So it was just weird. Like I just played the viola and his eyes just, it was like, I know you.
That is amazing. Oh my God. That's I love it. What a cool story. So we're going to get a little bit more into folks writing their own music to connect to Spirit Baby. But I would like to back up a minute because you also help with helping people create music or use music to improve or enhance fertility too. So can you riff on that for a minute? How does that work?
So I developed with a friend of mine who's a doula and a life coach and also a yoga practitioner. We developed a video series called Courageous Pregnancy. And in that we use a lot of sound healing type practices and some partner exercises and visualization and things. So the music is woven through it all. And so in individual sessions though, I would say it's a lot more, I feel sometimes it's like the spirit baby, like the messages and things sometimes can come through the music. And so sometimes I've actually worked on just vocal technique with someone, breathing, using their voice, and just really simple stuff, but I kind of see it as you're empowering this side of you, that the throat chakra, but it's also your creative energy. And I really feel that everyone should sing to their children. Like you could do it before they're born, during pregnancy, or even if you were like in the adoption process or something. I think there is this calling in. Yeah. And so I see it as sometimes I get intuitive messages, I guess, through the music. So sometimes even clients, I haven't necessarily written a song with them, but I just have a song going through my head before we have a session. And I'll just say like, hey, I had a client the other day. I was like, this song you need to hear today. I don't know why, and just share it. And one time with one of my clients, she's also like works in fertility work herself. And I didn't know the name of her business. And I sang her this song about sanctuary. And afterwards she goes, oh, well, my business name is Inner Sanctuary. And this is my, it was like one of her key words. She hadn't told me that, but it was just this intuitive thing. I need to sing you this song. And then like with that song, it's like a Christian worship song, but I changed the words into something that was basically using her power words or her kind of mantra type stuff and turned the song into a mantra. So rather than it's originally a song that's kind of singing to God, then I changed it to you're singing it to your baby. So it's like, let me be a sanctuary.
So this helps to enhance, not only just to, it's like, it sounds like they, I mean, obviously they go hand in hand, this enhancing fertility and connecting to spirit baby. So when you're talking, I'm thinking about several of my own clients that I've seen where I'm able to pick up on their chakra energy, and they will have a throat chakra, stagnation or whatever. And I talk about using voice and singing and things like that. And I feel like, the whole body is obviously connected and the spirit's connected. So I feel like that creates biological change. And you're also saying that creates connection to baby as well.
Yeah, I see, or I just feel it. I don't know, I don't know how you can do research specifically on this or anything.
I know,
but just from everything that I understand, my own understanding, and just as a music teacher for so many years, there was a lot of messages I noticed with kids and adults where people are told, I'm a good singer, I'm not a good singer, I have a good voice, I don't have a good voice. And our culture, we're raised with this, for lack of a better term, consumer culture. So we consume music, but we don't participate in it anymore. But people used to, every culture, every indigenous culture has music and dance as part of all their rituals and their traditions. And I've been super fascinated by the Sami people, are the native people to the Nordics. And I've been really fascinated since I started doing this work. They have a yoik, which is a personal song. So every person of one of the tribes has this song that's, I don't know if it's gifted to you by your parents or by someone else, but it's sort of this part of your identity. And they also use it to say, like, I've listened to one, Sophia Yanok, I think is her name. She kind of crosses over between pop music and the traditional Sami music, but she sings this one song about the wind, and it's just so powerful. And it's I would call it a little bit like the African traditions too, where there's a circular thing to the music. So rather than the song, it starts here and it ends here the way we think in Western music, it's this kind of where the song could just pick up at any point and it can keep going. And you hear that in the yoik, if you listen to them, they're very from the heart. But it's that concept that everyone in the tribe has this ability. It's not like only the shaman can, perform our sacred songs. Everyone sings, and it's just part of who you are.
That leads right into my next question. Thank you for that. That's exactly right. Because you help people create their own music, right? Or their own songs for babies to like actual original works, right? How does that?
Yeah. So
good.
Sometimes it's been, like I said, sometimes it's been taking, like my first client, she wrote a poem. She's a writer, and she wrote a poem, and then we turned the poem more into lyrics, because poetry can be a bit more where you don't repeat anything, but usually with music, you want to have some repetition and things. So I kind of helped her form it into kind of verses and refrains and things like that. But then with her, I actually I started out singing, making up my own tune, but for some reason with her, we went through kind of a catalog of songs that I knew. And I started singing this Irish jig, and she was like, oh, I used to dance this Irish step dance as a kid, and this song reminds me. She goes, but I don't want the song that I, performed to a million times as a kid, but something similar. So I kind of had all these tunes. I just kept humming them until we found one that she said, oh yeah, that one. And so then we kind of worked the lyrics into the song. But the other way it can go is like a parody, we call it, or where you start with a song you already know and you change the lyrics to fit, like the sanctuary example I was talking about. Then the song I gave you to play it at the end of this is a completely, I wrote the music to it. So when I've been co-creating with people, I found they struggle with the tune part. So basically what I've been doing is working with clients with the lyrics. And so the recording you have, Our Love Shines Like the Sun, it was she and I, during coaching sessions, I would take a little bit of time and come back to this song. So we'd talk about other stuff and talk about our fertility story, and then we'd come back to the song. And then the next time we'd do a little bit more. So we did it over probably 3 or 4 sessions. But I started asking her questions about her story and, who in her family was she close to? Who would she picture that she would want to present her child to? Like who in your life would you want to show up? And they could be living or dead, because this is just all in your head, right? So she talked about this grandma on this farm, and I just said, just describe the farm and what are you doing? And so we had this whole kind of visioning sort of thing. And then she said, oh, we were picking berries and we were together and we were holding hands. And so I started putting this all into the lyrics and kind of weaving her words with, I just put it more like kind of poetically put it together and wove it with her. Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful process. And it's so personal.
It's very, and the style is kind of varied. I mean, my own influences are probably classical music and jazz and kind of pop-ish folk music. And, I studied, like I said, fiddle tunes and things, like Swedish fiddle tunes now and Irish ones and things. But so I have kind of a really eclectic background. So I've written a lot of different styles. So I feel like I could take a little bit of the vibe from the person and see what fits to their feeling. But I think I was a little hesitant on this Our Love Shines Like the Sun, because I felt, it's so upbeat and it's this happy tune. And I think, but you're connecting with your spirit baby should be this meditation and we should be quiet and calm. But I keep coming back to the thing that it's about joy and the love connection with the baby and with you.
Really?
And
I mean, that's so funny that you mentioned that, because I had a client just the other day that her spirit baby was coming through as like this like rock and roll and like old rock and roll music, like 80s hair bands, right? And this song that popped in my head was from the band Poison, and they were singing "Don't Need Nothing But a Good Time," right? Like, how can I and I was like, I'm telling you, this song is like, it was in my head 2 days before I had that client appointment, and it kept around in my head, and I'm like, I don't know where this came from. And lo and behold, it was for this client.
Yeah, interesting. So how did you know to share it with the client?
Well, first of all, how he presented was just very like rock and roll, like he likes 80s hair bands and like 90s grunge bands. And she's like, oh my God, it sounds like my husband. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's very much like that. And then I was like, there's this song that, because he was trying to convey to her a message around living life, like loving life, how it is right now. And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, I went,
that's what that song was. Yeah.
He sent me this song, and it was like so interesting. I'm clairvoyant, so I see these almost like a movie or like an image in movies of these babies, and he was like slapping his forehead like this, like, you're not getting it, Maria, you're not getting it, Maria. And then finally I went, oh, and he was like, finally. Finally, you're getting it.
So funny. I feel like they're so sassy sometimes.
Oh gosh, so
Yeah.
sassy, so sassy. But it's funny. It's like you would think. I love that you said that. That you would think it would be this very soft, piece, like almost classical. And some babies
Yeah.
do like that type of music,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this
I think
baby
there
was
is
like
some,
full on
yeah.
hair band, like rock.
Yeah. And I think, um, I also think there's different places for different types of music too, because I also, for our pregnancy program, Roxanne did this meditation where the reading part of this meditation, which is where you meet your spirit baby. And it's kind of like you go to a garden and you meet, and then there's a pause to what does your spirit baby have to say to you? And it's kind of this chance for you to meditate. And originally we talked about just putting nature sounds behind it. And then I said, well, wait, this program's all about music. Let me try and just create something that fits. And so I sat down and, I mean, usually like the songs, like the one that you'll play, I spend a lot of time crafting the song and I write out what chords I'm doing and I plan the whole thing. But this meditation, I just sat down, listened to her words, and I just sat down the piano and I just created this background and just improvised it. And then it took me a little bit more with the layers, but then I added some violin and viola and I was like, it needs this here and that there. And she has a part where it's like your spirit baby peeks out at you. And I had this little pizzicato, where you're plucking the strings, and it just, she has this image of going up in an elevator and going down for kind of getting to the place where you're going. And so I kind of was going up in the music and then going down in the, and it just flowed. I don't know. And afterwards I listened to it myself and actually fell asleep. And I don't normally, I mean, I'm one who has a hard time falling asleep in like crowded places or with noise or whatever. It was just so calming. And I really felt actually my second child, my spirit baby that's around me now, I felt her with me when I was doing that. It was just like this improvisation that was like her music or whatever, her inspiration. So it's been, and then one of the first clients to start going through the series, she's like, well, I don't want to go any farther. I just want to keep doing this spirit baby meditation. And she had only had the program for a couple of days, and she was like, I listened to it like 12 times.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's that. And so that's definitely a more meditative, little ripply piano music and violin, and that's more just, long notes. And so I do think there is this, but to me, that is kind of more without lyrics. I feel like once I put the lyrics in, it's more about, I feel like the other music is more about connecting and the meditation. And then these other songs are more like embodying the child, the spirit of the child, like your rock song. It's like, this is the personality a bit of this child is coming through. And I feel like, and then when I've done the recording for my clients, I have a recording where it takes out my part singing so that they can sing along. And then so because I really, to me, the most powerful thing is for you to sing to your child. And then when you're pregnant, like that is so powerful. Your baby has the ability, I believe, to hear you even when they don't have hearing. Mm-hmm. So I've seen these devices for like putting speakers on your belly and all these things, or even somebody made a vaginal device with speakers. Whoa. So your baby can go to a rock concert and hear the music. Whoa. And I'm I don't know why I came across this music person, but the whole concept of it just made me go, no, this is not right. Like, you're going to actually be shocking your baby. It's too close, like in that area. Like, why are you putting speakers there? But yeah, the company is like, oh, your baby can only hear if you use our speakers. How did we survive all these centuries and communicate with our child without this technology? I think we're fine. Even I even intuitively feel like putting speakers on your belly isn't even necessarily the best experience. I feel like
Right.
the best thing would be singing, so it's your own vibration, or taking the headphones off and like really stopping and like enjoying the music with your baby. So you're listening to it from your ears and they're hearing it as well.
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen if you actually just put the speakers on your belly and you're not even listening, you're actually missing the opportunity to communicate. It's like the point of it is to like communicate with each other and have a moment versus, well, someone developmentally told me that my child's gonna be smarter if I play them Mozart on these speakers. So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, there's some.
So that's my moment of, I feel like some people just go on these weird tangents with technology and they're missing the point that we have this ability to communicate and the babies can hear it. I mean, obviously, if you've worked with spirit baby energy too, the babies hear us. The babies hear our music. They know our voice, so even though they don't have hearing until the end of the pregnancy, they're feeling it. They're, and I believe that vibrations are really a thing too. And there's stories in like Suzuki training where it's a lot of playing by ear with little kids. And there's stories of the baby that was in the belly, if they learn the violin later, after the older child was like at lessons and the mom's there the whole time during the pregnancy. And then when that second child comes along and they do the songs, they learn them so much faster because they've already heard them and they're like already patterning with this music. So there's plenty of anecdotal and things about kids where the father died and the child, when they learn to play piano, gets to a certain age and has the capability, and they play some song that the dad was playing when the mom was pregnant.
Yeah.
And they, and they never heard it in this life, but they heard it before in the womb. And it's,
I wonder if that's why so here's a story briefly. When I was, my mom said that we were walking down the street as 3 years old, and in a storefront was a whole Elvis display. And she said, I went nuts. Okay. Elvis! Elvis! To this day, I'm now 45 years old. Anytime I'm having, for all of 2020, I put on Elvis Presley and I am soothed immediately. It doesn't matter if it's a slow melody or one of his, more rollish. It doesn't matter. His voice brings me, I just am calm immediately. And I wonder if it's because she listened to Elvis Presley.
Did your mom listen to that when when she was pregnant?
Yeah, and probably even before.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I've been reading, I forgot the author, but he wrote a book on music and pregnancy, and he does music therapy for pregnant women. And the book's originally in Spanish and then translated to English. So there's a couple little things that don't quite translate between cultural things, like more male dominated language sometimes where I'm like, oh, okay. But the actual working with the pregnant women was really fascinating, and talking about the effect of the music and how how that is he does talk about purposely picking songs that you can use later when the child's young to calm them down. So that's really interesting that you kind of have an example of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I can last through it.
Yeah, to this day. Now, why would my son gets on the keyboard, right? And he'll play this very like dark and stormy night music. Like, where did that come from? I don't know. But
what were you listening to while you were pregnant?
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Well, he's adopted, so I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So you don't know what was, that I'm also curious during adoption too, like what things come with genetic markers or, influences from that you don't realize until later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well, I always
interesting.
knew I had connected to him well before he came to us because I knew that I would
Wow.
have a challenging relationship with him. He reminds me of my older brother. And so I know
Mm.
that, and it's a good thing. It's not
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah,
It's just, I
yeah,
knew we would.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I know we were connected, and I think that that dark and stormy night music is very much like, he's not a dark kid, but he's a jokey kid, and he likes to like hide behind corners and like, like scare you.
Uh,
So I think
yeah.
that's kind of what he does with this. But I'm like, I definitely wasn't listening to dark and stormy night stuff. Although the fertility process is pretty dark and stormy night, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I mean, I noticed that the first client that I talked about that I met, her child, she was 48 and had 7 miscarriages, I believe, pregnancy losses in a 3-year period before working with me. And so she decided to do donor egg IVF. And I came in at the point where she had already chosen the clinic and decided to go there. But in the work, the spirit baby work, I found it really fascinating that she was pretty intuitive too, but she felt there was a specific soul that kept coming back in some of these pregnancies. And I kept wondering what's wrong? Why aren't they coming through? Why is she not coming through? And is there some blockage? Is there something going on? And eventually, after working together and kind of processing her intuition, my intuition, there was this feeling that she kept saying to my client, "I'm too fragile for this earth." And so I thought, well, maybe it means she's not going to come at all. But then I had this feeling that it was actually more, she needed a different family. She needed a different situation and needed to be an only child. And this client had already 2 kids. And so there was this, but they were super like soul connected. Like I could just feel, like she felt some of the pregnancies were a different soul and she was not attached to those other souls at all. Like she was just kind of like, okay, someone else came through. But this one, like every time she would just cry every time she'd talk about her. But yeah, it was an interesting work to see. I eventually felt that this egg donor was this change of energy. It was really hard for the 2 of them to let go and cut this tie and say like, I'm going to go to someone else and you're going to have a different baby. And so there was something I felt energetically with this donor that was like, this is bringing in the energy you need to allow another soul. And even when she went in for the transfer, both of us were still not, it was like, there might be some energy, but there's a lot of souls checking her out. I felt right at that point. It was like this, okay, it's open. Let's see.
Cool.
But yeah, really beautiful.
So fascinating. So if people can't, find someone like you to work with, I'm sure we're going to have all your contact information so people can contact you. But I'm wondering about if folks feel like they can create music on their own. Do you feel like there are like top 3 things or 2 things that you would recommend people start with?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would say that everyone has a song and that a lot of people do some kind of music training at some point in your growing up. So even if you never were in band or orchestra or choir, you probably did some sort of singing practice or or you might have played an instrument for a year and then you put it away. But I feel like any instrument that's hiding in your closet or something can be a way to get out your emotions and process. So even just playing what I would say random music, but improvising, just letting, you have a keyboard at home and you never took piano lessons or you did a long time ago, you don't have any technical skills, so to speak or whatever, but just sitting down and just trying things out. Like actually on the keyboard, a really simple improvisation, which is kind of fun, is only play with the black keys. So it's what's called the pentatonic scale. So it's a 5-note scale. And if you combine any of those keys together, it gives a fairly nice, well, it could sound kind of Asian sounding, but it works really well. And you can just, I've done this with little kids and stuff where they just go and play. And so that's like a really basic meditative kind of sound, I think. For singing, just playing around with familiar songs. I think we feel like we have to write the next amazing composition of music or something. I'm communicating with my baby. I have to write this serious symphony, whatever. It doesn't, it can be super simple. It can be Frere Jacques, you know, are you sleeping, Brother John? Change the words, you know, like you could take a favorite pop song and simply, maybe it's got someone's name in it, and you simply put in a name for your child, you know, whether you feel their name or not, you can make up a name for now. Or I think the souls can sometimes have a name that you call them, and then they might, maybe a different name comes through later, but you know, you can still put a name for now and they'll know that we're talking about you. Yeah. So, but yeah, simple things like putting in words like that, or working on a mantra, or, you know, a positive affirmation statement. I'm healthy. I'm a mother. Can be super simple. And then taking that and just speaking it maybe a little bit faster or changing the rhythm. And then you can just try, I am a mother. I am holy. I am peaceful. Like, it doesn't have to be a lot of notes. It can be very simple, one note, and you can change the rhythm around or play with that. So I think don't get caught up in, you can hear my songs and it's like a polished, produced thing. Mm-hmm. But I've done all my recordings with really simple, like I need to actually get better equipment to do more. I'd like to start doing recordings to actually like sell the recordings as well, because I have a backlog of songs now.
Oh, yes, you do. So you're saying keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple and repetition. So if you are trying to do kind of more traditional song where you have sort of repeated part of the refrain, and then the other, think of the refrain as like your core message, I love you, you're my baby, whatever. And then the verses would be more your story. What is it that the place you want to go with your child, the thing you want to do with them, the experiences you want to share with them, the message you have, something like that.
Oh, so, I love this. Yeah. I love every part of this. This is so fun. I hope people create their own stuff and connect with you too, because I just feel like, I mean, I've never been trained or anything, but vocally I've been trained, but not with instruments. And I just feel like there's so much healing to happen in music that, you know, that by itself enhances fertility, but to be able to speak with your baby that you're meant to have and connect with them in this way, I just think it's so amazing. I feel like also when you talk about keeping it simple and not getting too fluffy and making it this amazing symphony, that it turns off a little bit.
It can be if you're inspired.
Indeed. And I want to listen if you can, because that's amazing. But right, so it turns off left brain a little bit and you get into this creative mode, and it opens up this pathway, I think, for connecting to baby a little bit better. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Any words of wisdom or hope that you like to offer to people who are watching and are listening? Or maybe a song to share? You want to sing?
Oh, well, I have the recording for you, so I guess you can, maybe you can add that in at the end.
I will.
It'll be hard. Yeah, we'll add that in after. But I've been seeing little, I'm holding up a feather if you're listening to this without the picture. I've been seeing little messages from my spirit baby. I was listening to other people who communicate with spirit babies, and it was reminding me like, oh, I should have a sign. And so the first time I did a photo shoot for wanting to be a fertility coach was several years back in the US before I actually started my business. I was getting everything ready there. Anyway, I was doing this photo shoot, and the photographer said, I want you to think about this baby that you're going to have someday, and this business, and you're going to help other women have their babies. And I look up, and there's this feather just like floating down in the sky. And I reached my hand, I just sat there, and I was like, I just looked up, and I just put my hand out. I didn't even move. It was like one of those intuitive, I don't know. I just reached my hand out, and I literally, without moving, the feather just landed in my hand. But the photographer was so caught off because she saw it, but she didn't take a picture because she was like, whoa.
Is this happening?
Yeah, she's just like, wow. She's like, you're gonna be blessed, Leah. Like, she was just, yeah. So now I feel like my second child has been leaving feathers, and the other day I thought, oh, well, is this really this other child, or am I just seeing feather? Like, because there are birds that drop feathers and whatever. And literally after I had that thought, I took 3 more steps, and there's like 10 feathers. It was like,
Oh my God.
it's like, she's like, oh, you want to play this game? Okay, I'm going to drop all these on you. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And I was singing, I don't know, for like 2-3 months, I was singing Amazing Grace. And just in the last month, she's like, my name's Grace, and you keep calling me Sophia, but my name's Grace. And I'm like, that's why I was singing this song. Yeah. So she actually told me about my child. It is named Emmanuel, but during both the pregnancy I had before that Emmanuel now says was them, both that pregnancy and the beginning of my pregnancy, I felt I had a girl soul. Like, the energy was feminine. And then we do the 20-week ultrasound, and I'm like, okay, it's a boy. But I'd always had this picture of a boy, like my picture when I visually see my child, it was a boy, but my feeling during the 2 pregnancies was female. And my thought, up until my son told me this, was that, or until she said something to me, my thought was always that Grace, or this second child, I was feeling both of them. So I just thought, oh, I was feeling her energy. She's feminine. And then, but Emmanuel decided to be born first. And so, because I've heard people talk about spirit babies sometimes switching places during a pregnancy. So I just thought, okay, maybe. But Grace said, I said, well, I was always calling you Sophia. So who's Sophia? And she's like, that's Emmanuel. She's like, Emmanuel is both genders. She even said, like, the Native American term is like two-spirit. And so she's like, yeah, you were feeling the feminine and the masculine. And, that's, and then when Emmanuel also said that was the previous pregnancy, I'm like, oh gosh, that felt feminine to me too. But it was 6 weeks. So we never got an actual gender, thing from anyone. So it was just my own intuition about it. But I said, oh my gosh, this is wild.
Yes. I love how
I've been just blown away by these messages, and this little girl, like I see her with like her hand on her hips, like, Mom, of course this is the case. It's like, you need to figure out these things about your first child before I can come. Like, you have to get everything settled with this child, and then I'll have space. And, it's like, oh.
I know. You had a moment like I did with that client. It's like, oh.
Well, that's why I've been singing these songs. Yeah. Yes. And I did write a song before Emmanuel came through. I did write a song, and then my husband picked the middle name Peter. And the song's about Peter, but I wasn't yet thinking like oh, I'm going to write a song for my future child. It was more just one of these like creative spurts where I had like this scripture passage in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write about Peter walking on water and the story with Jesus. It's like Jesus is walking on water to his disciples in the boat, and he says to Peter, get out of the boat and walk on the water. And then Peter gets out of the boat and does walk, but then he sinks. And most Christian people tell this story and then are like, Peter's a doubter and he didn't believe, and you can't be like Peter, But I heard someone talk about it as actually Peter did get out of the boat. The rest of the disciples just sat there, were stunned, and like didn't do anything. And so Peter actually took the risk and then also fell, but then was pulled up out of the water by Jesus. So it's kind of more this metaphor about going through trials and getting through it. And like, so I wrote this song, the chorus is about come out on the water, get out of your boat and set your soul free. Uh-huh. And when I was in labor, suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, we picked out the same Peter, and my song was about Peter. And so it just kind of all, yeah. And then when I started doing the work and I started writing the songs, I'm like, wait, I wrote a song for my child. I just didn't plan it that way, but yeah.
That's so interesting. So now people can create songs for their babies intentionally.
Yes. And in my
like
free,
the feathers dropping out of the sky, like that's amazing.
In my free opt-in, I actually have the recording of the song that I wrote about the come out on the water song. Good. So if you want to hear the song, you can get on my mailing list. And then there's a bit in there too that's about general meditation and some inviting in your spirit baby. And so, yeah.
Well, I'm heading over there myself. I'll be getting that. So thank you. Leah, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your wisdom and insights. I can't wait to publish this. It'll be out in November, I think. So, and then we will link to your pre-opt-in. And is it a different song that you had for the end of this podcast, or is it the same song?
Yeah. No, they'll have to opt in to get that song. Cool. But no, the one for the end of the podcast is it's the one I was talking about the woman who talked about her grandparents and on the farm. And
cool.
Yeah. So it's Our love shines like the sun.
We will play that now for listeners and watchers of the video of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today and for taking the time. I know it's where you are, so be mindful of that. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Maria.